Hi, Julie Usher here. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make the rubber stamped pictures that are the inserts inside my Valentine boxes on the lids of them. It looks really complicated, but it's actually pretty easy. In another video, I'm going to show you how to put this all together. To begin with, you want to start with a heart cookie that fits behind that area. And this one's about 4 or 5 inches wide. It's been fully top coated and iced, and that top coat's been allowed to dry till it's dry all the way through. If you're rubber stamping on a cookie, you don't want soft underlying icing or you will break that underlying icing. To rubber stamp, I work with my normal liquid gel food colorings, and I take an uninked foam ink pad. They do come uninked. This one was used with brown food coloring before, so it's starting brown, but it was dried out, so I'm applying a little bit more food coloring to it, and I'm going to blot it off. You don't want to see any pooling on top, but you do want it to be moist. The other key thing to note is that I'm working on a non-skid surface. This is a little shelf liner material, and that's great with rubber stamping and stenciling and lots of these techniques where you're applying pressure to a cookie, because otherwise the cookie's likely to move as you're stamping it, and then that will lead to a blurry pattern. Now that I've inked the stamp pad, and again, I didn't have any pools of ink on it, I'm just making sure I'm just inking the stamp, again with food coloring. All of this is entirely edible. I'm gonna wipe some of these edges down where it's gone off the pattern, because sometimes those will show up if I'm not careful. So where there's extra coloring there. And I'm making sure it's glistening all over, because that will indicate that it's fully inked. And I want to orient this probably right about here. Some of it, it's a big stamp, so some of it's going to fall off this cookie. That's okay, because we just want to make sure it's oriented, it reveals through the lid of the box. And now I'm pressing pretty hard, harder than you might think, particularly in the middle of the cookie where the icing, when it dries, it tends to dry with a divot. I want to make sure that stamp makes contact there. I like these big acrylic blocks because they allow me to apply a lot of pressure uniformly. Some people actually will remove the stamp from the block and just press on the stamp, and it will conform more to the cookie that way. Either way is fine. So there you have it. Beautiful imprint. And the additional thing I did on that cookie, let me just bring it over here so we have a handy frame of reference. Obviously didn't start with that pink and red on it, but you can add a blush of color which kind of has a vintage look, and that's very easy to do with a dry petal or luster dust. The difference between petal and luster dust is petal does not have a sheen, whereas a luster dust does. And to get that kind of antique sort of blush look, I simply take the dust dry and brush them on with a dry brush. If you see that your stamp ink is glistening at all, you might want to wait a little bit for that to dry, because you could smudge it in the application of that dust. But mine looks pretty darn dry, so I'm going to give it a whirl. It's okay if it overflows the boundaries here, because again, I'm trying to go for a kind of an antique effect. If you wanted to keep it within the boundaries, I applied a lot there, but we'll shake a lot of that off. If you wanted to keep it completely within the boundaries, then you might want to paint this on by extending the dust with an extract. But we're just going to lightly apply. I want the flowers kind of red, and then we'll paint the bird maybe a lighter pink. So let me get some of that extra dust off. The way to do that is to just take a fan to it or shake it off, and then I might see where it's heavily applied. I'll spread it around a little bit more with my paintbrush to kind of even it out. Taking just a little bit of extra dust where I spilled it on the countertop and putting it in these other areas. I'm going to apply it a little less heavily down here just so you can get a sense of the difference, because you can get quite a range of color depending on how heavily it's applied. And that dust will stay on. It's a dry cookie on a dry dust, but I guess it's the static that kind of keeps it there. I want to rub off some of that color with my finger because it's too heavy there. Same thing down here. Clean finger. And that will take down the color a notch too if you'd like. The last thing I want to do on here is give a few little pink highlights to the bird. So let's open up a pink dust. These dusts come in a broad array of colors. And I can still use the same brush I used as long as I shake it out and I make sure there's no color on it without mixing the colors too much. If you're painting, not so. You'd have to thoroughly clean out the brush in between colors. So I'm just going to paint his wings and tail with a little bit of pink. Maybe his breast there. Shake off the extra, and then lastly come in with a little bit of green for the leaves and stems. And these most certainly are going to go out of the boundaries because they're really small and I'm working with dust. If I wanted them in the boundaries, I could work with this as a paint. Get a few leaves here. Shake off the extra. And there you have a rubber stamped cookie with the application of dry petal dust as sort of a blush accent, which makes a perfect insert into my Valentine's boxes, which we'll come to in the next video. Till then, live sweetly.